The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome.
I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
With the velvety voice, Peyton Jones.
Yeah, I sound like a cake tastes, rich and smooth.
They don't know this is the third time we've started the podcast because we keep, like, our metaphors are just, they're not working. They need to be
Some
redone.
of them are just wrong.
So here's what's going on, guys. We are using actually a professional grade recording for recording two people in two different locations. So I'm hoping that velvety Peyton Jones voice you just heard is going to be a regular thing on the podcast moving forward because
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you sound almost like I should be listening to Love Lines at midnight right now. That's the kind of host you sound like.
So tell me about your problem, Pete. What seems to be giving you difficulty right now?
Oh man. So anyway, moving right along. What's new with you, man? What's going on?
Well, I tell you what's not new with me is I'm not at Star Wars Land.
Yeah, are you going to that?
No. Not anytime soon, because first off, it costs $1 million, and then when you get in, like, okay, so my annual pass ran out, and when I go to Disneyland with my kids, we're riding back on the bus, and because my daughter, she gets to ride on this cool little bus, and so we bypass the tram, and the bus driver's really cool. He's like, "Hey, who's going to Star Wars Land?" And this was like on the Wednesday before it opened, so. If you saw any of the videos, if you're an Uber nerd, you watched, the part where they were on stage Wednesday night, and Lucas was there, Harrison Ford was there, Mark Hamill was there, Chewbacca, well, a guy in a Chewbacca costume was there, and, everybody was there on stage, and they shut off these fireworks, and I was sitting at Rivers of America waiting for Phantasmagic or whatever to start up, and I saw that, and I remember thinking, why are there fireworks going off right there right now at this time? It was that, it was that big, boom boom over in Star Wars Land on the other side of the rocks. And but anyways, on the way back, the guy's like, "Oh yeah, today's the day all the employees are in there. Anyone coming back from that?" Nobody. How many of you guys have passes for a couple days from now? A lot of people raised their hand. I was shocked. And he goes, "What time?" And I remember kind of my head cricking to the left, like, what do you mean, what time? And the people said, from 2 to 6. So, like, I don't know how much these tickets were, but I know they were more than normal admission, and you get to go in for 4 stinking hours. And I kid you not, the guy goes, well, make sure you get in to see the cantina. That's the hardest thing to see. If you get there, right as you get in, you should have enough time to get through it by the end of the line. And I thought, oh, no. I ain't paying that kind of money to go to one thing and buy a drink at a counter. Not happening.
Buy an overpriced drink,
A blue soy milk with a little bit of like mango in it. That's what they do. Oh, cool. I got my mango soy milk.
Yeah. I'm not doing the soy milk.
But really, to be honest, I think they should have like a dispenser. Welcome to the Church Planter Podcast. Today's topic is mentoring your intern, by the way. We should give a shout out to the topic so you know if to stick around. If you're new here, we will get to church planning, but first I want to talk about the dispenser for the blue milk, which I think ought to be that big walrus thing, and you squeeze its nips and it comes out.
Welcome once again to the Church Planter Podcast.
You just go up and you squeeze that thing like Luke did, and you fill up your cup. That would be rad. Like, if I designed Star Wars Land, I would totally put that. I would also make so you could, like, put people in the guts, like in the kids' play area. You could stuff your kids inside of Tauntaun guts, and it would smell terrible. And there'd be showers nearby.
I saw a great meme on Facebook where the guy was like, yeah, if they stuck me in a Tauntaun, I'd be kicking my leg out because I'd be too warm. I was like, dude, that's so me when I sleep.
That's so true, dude. That is so true. And I bet like if you did Star Wars like video games of the original trilogy, you could have like that challenge where like Luke's limbs keep popping out and you got to pop them back in and you get like extra points, like a bonus level. That'd be rad.
That would be rad.
Yeah. And then like Ewok herding, there could be all these cool. Okay, so this is where they blew it on Star Wars Land. By the way, welcome to Church Planter Podcast.
By the way, you're getting really hot on your mic, man. So you need to like move your face away or turn your mic down.
Okay, how's that?
It's better.
Oh, you know what? Because I turned it up for you earlier. Because you were like, you sound so good. I want to hear more of you.
Well, that's usually what I say to you.
So how's that?
That's better.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
So I hope I'm not overpowering, like, now that I sound so good. Moving along. So I want to start this over again.
This is like going to be like number 4. We're going for it.
I'm pretty taken with myself sounding so good. This is amazing. It's like new days. So anyways, you know where they blew it though, and you'll totally agree with me on this. They did not pick an existing Star Wars location that we all know about, which I don't mind, but they blew the opportunity to put us in Jabba's palace. Like, I needed to walk through Jabba's palace. I needed like a skiff guard ride. We're going over the dunes and there's Sarlacc pits and it's like you're going to fall off. And I needed that, but I needed a walkthrough experience where I start off, I'm in Jabba's room. He's a giant animatronic. We drop through the trapdoor. We go through the Rancor pit. There's a giant, animatronic Rancor trying to grab us. Like, that would have been the ride. And then you go through on the sail barge. Then you're on the sail barge. And then, like I said, it's pitching back and forth because cannons are shooting it. And kind of like on the Pirates of the Caribbean, you got the ships on either side. That would have been rad. And I think they kind of blew it,
Well, that's Disney for you. Disney really doesn't know how to entertain people and provide them value.
No, not like us, man.
No.
Welcome to the Church Planter Podcast. Well, we know how to entertain and give you value. Hey, we kind of do that.
Okay.
We do. Some people don't find it entertaining. They get in here and go, oh, just stuff this, man. I'm out of here.
Well, we have had people who are way too serious for this podcast.
Hey, do we got any reviews?
Not any reviews, but did you like that that one person who Facebooked us and was like, I'm so glad you're staying? We won't say everything else that he said because it was a private Facebook.
It was a private Facebook indeed, but yeah, apparently we made some people happy out there. So if you're here, Pete and I were going to hand off the podcast, and we've repented of that foolishness.
I kind of feel like it was a new Coke moment. Where Coke's like, hey, we're coming out with a new recipe. Just kidding. Thanks for buying all of our Coke, and now you love us even more.
That's right, man. But now it's like vanilla Coke Cherry Zero.
Oh, dude. You're gonna I don't know what you're gonna think. So I got a new topic. You know how we had the Charger for several months? It's been guns for like the last year and a half.
Longest running, like heavyweight contender, big time.
No doubt. I have a new topic. I kind of don't know if it should be the topic that I'm going to bring up. But, here's my problem. Whenever I've got something that's on my mind, like all the time, that's just what I talk about. Like,
of course.
That's my groove. So, and you made me think of it with the new Coke and all the Coke flavors. All right, here's the deal, guys. I've been, for the last couple of months, attempting to get back in shape. For those of you who know me, know I'm definitely out of shape. I mean, there's no hiding that one, right? I mean,
This is full circle because this goes back to the Speedos conversation. So carry on.
I don't even remember that conversation.
That was our first thing. We were talking about, not Speedos, sorry. Underoos. Totally different.
Yes.
Comic book themed Speedos for children, but now they make them for adults. So clarification, but carry on.
So here's the deal. So I started working out again and been doing that consistently for the last few months, right? So I'm in the zone, right? Dropping weight, feeling really good about that. Because whenever you start, exercising and changing your diet, you want to see some results. I mean, you're not going to get fit overnight, but you want to see something. That's what gives you the encouragement that you're on the right path, right? Because without that, it's like, why am I starving myself? Why am I doing all this if I don't get any results?
Right.
So hey, man, I'm like feeling good because I literally had to drill more holes in my belt, right? Because it just was too big.
No way, dude. That's rad.
Yeah,
I haven't seen you in a while. I need to see you.
Dude, there's nothing you wouldn't even notice. Like that's how out of shape I am. Like it's going to take another 20, 25 before you even notice there's a difference. So, like when I went to Phoenix last month, I normally got to bring in another conversation. I normally wear my firearm in what's called inside the waistband holster. And I was speaking, and it was like I couldn't wear it there because I didn't want to freak people out. Like in Arizona, you can actually open carry. So if I took off my coat, it wouldn't have been illegal if people saw my firearm. But I'm like, you know what? I'm in a room there's going to be just a ton of people here who are uncomfortable around firearms. So I was using my ankle holster, right? Because I still got to have it with me. I just didn't want to wear it on my side. And literally, I didn't have time before I left to drill holes in my belt. I had to go to Walmart to buy a new belt because my pants were almost falling off, right? Because they just weren't tight enough anymore because the belt didn't fit. So, stuff like that. Like you have all this encouragement, right? I'm on the right track. Things are working. And then, then for like a week, basically nothing. Right. And I'm like, dude, why? Excuse me. I'm always hungry. I'm always starving myself. And it's like discouraging. So I kid you not, man. I'm like on Netflix one night. Jamie's like, oh, I got to go to bed. So she goes to bed. And I turn on this documentary called Fed Up. Have you ever seen it or heard of it?
No.
Hosted by Katie Couric. Now, let me just preface this by saying, I'm not a doctor. I don't even pretend to play one on TV. I don't know enough about this stuff to know what's true and what's not. Like that's to me one of the hardest things in health is you never really know what's true because everybody's got their opinions. And then, one guy says one thing this year. I mean, you remember for decades when we were kids, eggs were like so bad for you. And they're like, don't have more than 2 a week. And now they're like, oh, you know what? We screwed up. Eggs are actually just fine for you
now. Yeah.
So, I mean, I have very little faith in the health community that they actually know what they're talking about. But I'm watching this documentary, and I will say this. I don't know if this is legit, but it absolutely resonated with me. So Katie Couric's hosting it. She's like, look, my whole life, it started out as like these rare oddball cases, kids with type 2 diabetes, and now it's like commonplace in America. What happened? And so, they basically go through the story, and they're like, the thing that really caught my attention is this one guy goes, when is a calorie not a calorie? And I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? And he's like, basically in a laboratory, they got to test, what's the caloric value of all the different foods and stuff that's sold. And he goes, but that's in a laboratory. He goes, our bodies aren't laboratories. And so our bodies don't actually process things equally. They don't process them the same way. And so he gave the example, and you being a nurse, you would actually be someone whose opinion I'd value on this because you would understand this a lot more than me. He basically said that when you have sugar, it immediately goes to the liver, and your body's pumping in insulin, and then it's used to put it into fat right away.
Right.
And basically his point was, he goes, that it doesn't even like you're starving yourself. And so they go through all this whole thing about how addictive sugar is, and I mean, I think we all kind of know that on some level. I mean, if you eat sugar, you know it. But what was like astonishing to me is they basically went, okay, when the whole health food craze started, fat was the big evil thing. They're like, oh, don't eat fat, don't eat fat. And so they started taking fat out of the food, and they started putting in sugar because it tastes awful when you take out the fat.
Right.
And so he's like, basically everything's got sugar. Literally everything. Your breads, all this stuff. Yeah. And so, I'm watching this, and all of a sudden it like clicks to me. So one of the things they're saying is, that's part of the reason why you're always hungry, is because your mind is literally addicted to the sugar, and it's craving the sugar fix. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I'm always hungry on this diet, like always. And I know I'm not eating right, but what I'm doing is what they've always said for years, which is calories in, calories out. Like, I'm just counting calories. The problem for me is that those calories in are crap calories.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter. Like, calories in, calories out is not the magic formula at all. I mean, you still got to be, cautious of the calories in, but like the point that it gave was, and I don't know if this was in the movie or in the book that I read afterwards, because the problem with the movies, they gave no solution. They just said, here's the problem. Sugar's in everything, and it's technically a toxin. And you basically, the amount that we eat is absurd. And like, you basically, every time someone comes out and says, hey, this stuff is bad for you, the food industry just goes crazy, goes ballistic.
Right.
And I'm looking at this going, because like they classified, I don't know, it was like ketchup as a vegetable. Like they lobbied the government to get them to classify some sauce as a vegetable, and and the guy who's being interviewed, he's like, it's not in my house, but yeah, the government did that, and blah 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 blah. So long story short, right? There's no solution in the movie, so I go to their website.
Man. It's corn syrup. That's the chief crop that we do in America. So we put freaking corn syrup in everything.
Everything.
And the funny thing is it's where some people are doing that keto diet, which is terrible for you, by the way.
Is it really?
Well, it is, because what it tends to do is people start having problems with high blood pressure. So God did design the body to need carbs and to have carbs, but the paleo is probably, everything in moderation. Like, if you go extreme paleo, it's not good, because if you come across like potatoes or carbs or whatever as a paleo, you're going to mow them down. Like, you have to have carbs sometimes, and you've got to. But the keto thing is, hey, let's just eat fats, high fats and protein. We know that's not, like, just logic tells you, well, your blood pressure starts spiking, and there's different reasons for that over time. And so a lot of people get on, they start going to the doctor with those problems, and they say to them, get off keto. What are you doing?
Right.
Keto, if you do it, is great for a reset and good for a time. And then one of the things that I did for Lent, because everybody knows that Baptists do Lenten fasts, is just something I do every year with Andrea, is we went completely off sugar. And on Sunday we'd have a little bit, no big deal. That was our cheat day. But I swear to you, man, like last night, my daughter, she passed her junior lifeguard swim test. And we went out to celebrate, and I had a shake, and I was like, over at Ruby's, and you know how good those are, Pete.
Oh, dude,
and I was
totally.
like, I'm not even enjoying this right now. Like,
really?
Yeah, my body's just like, I don't even want sugar now. Alcohol, yes. Sugar, no. Just teasing. But, the reality is that, my body's like, yeah, I don't. So when you reset and you get off of that, it not only do you not crave it anymore, but your body, because I'm now like, yeah, I just don't eat sugar anymore. I'm avoiding it. And one of the ways to do that, you hit on that point, is there's a rule that says never eat out of a box or a bag and you'll be fine. So if you're eating your eggs, you pick up meat at the supermarket, boxes and bags, that's where you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's essentially what I've come to is, I went to their website, went to this doctor who I guess he's the guy who did the Daniel plan with Rick Warren,
right.
Which I always thought was like, why are you having Rick Warren tell everyone to do the Daniel plan? The guy clearly needs to be on the Daniel plan himself. Like,
right.
You don't expect me to tell you how to diet because look at me, I'm out of shape. So don't take your advice from me.
He was the authority of the biblical part of it, I think.
Well, but still,
I'm just teasing. I take your
man.
point.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't think he was successful with the Daniel plan. I mean, I've seen pictures
clearly
of him.
not.
No harm. Like I don't mean that in a mean way.
Right.
But I don't think it worked for him.
No, clearly not. So, but anyway, so it was that doctor, and he wrote a book. Like I don't even remember what it was called, but I think it was like, the 10-day sugar detox or something like that. But it really captured my attention because I was like, okay, this is the problem that I've had, and I've always had it my whole life. Like when I was back in college, I lost a lot of weight really quick and did massive damage to my body and didn't know it at the time. It reared its ugly head about 2 years later when I basically almost died, had to have my gallbladder removed. And if it stayed in a couple more days, it had already turned gangrene. I mean, I would have been dead. And so, I mean, I never learned how to eat properly, right? I always was hammered with the calories in, calories out. So if the calories in are crap, doesn't really matter because I'm spending more calories out, right? And that's just not a healthy way to eat. So, so I read his, 10-day sugar detox, and then I was talking with my buddy Wayne, who's a bodybuilder, and he knows all about this stuff. And he's like, yeah, no, what you really want to do is get like a glycemic index book and really learn what are the glycemic index of the different foods that you're eating. But kind of like what you just said, if it's basically processed, I'm not eating it. Right. And, I really, it's kind of funny. I've never liked sweet potatoes. Like something about a orange thing that's sweet is just weird to me, and I've never liked it.
Star Wars food, dude. Come on.
Dude, it is totally Star Wars food. Never liked it, man. Never liked it even remotely. But that's like now a major staple in my diet, right? Because I'm staying away from basically anything white, right? No more potatoes, no more breads. I mean, it would have to be, something that just doesn't have all the sugar added to it. And it's ironic, man, because like you said, and I still get to have sugar, right? I have it in my fruit, right? And all these different things they go through, because I've always heard, the fruit's so high in sugar, that's bad for you. Well, because of all the fiber that's with it, your body doesn't process it the same way as if it's a Coke. And I think one of the things that really I understood as soon as the guy said it was like, if you drink a 20 ounce of Coke, you actually have to run 4.5 miles to burn that Coke off because of how it quickly hits your liver and the insulin and all that other. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, but the visual in my head was like, no freaking wonder, man. I was just like,
right.
And it was something else. It was like a big gulp, or I don't remember what it was, but it was like you would have to do that every day for a week to burn off that big gulp. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. This is crazy. So, I never really was a big soda drinker, but I'm like, dude, I'm never even touching this stuff. Like that's out. But the whole reason I'm bringing all this up, because I know we're over and we need to actually get into our topic, is literally this week, since I've been on my own version, if you will, of the sugar detox, which is basically just not having anything with sugar, just eating tons of vegetables, sweet potatoes. Definitely get to have fats. You know, I get to have avocado, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
Eating fruit.
Dude, I got 4 trees. Come over to the Jones house. I'll say
Come over to the dark side. And, you know, the seeds and the nuts. And it was funny because, like, the first day, you know, I had this morning shake with all, you know, berries and seeds and nuts. And I was kind of like, this is kind of nasty, you know? And, dude, now I'm like, dude, this stuff is good. Like, it just tastes good to me. And the first couple of days, major headache, which I guess is the sugar, you know, withdrawal, if you will. Because again, it's addictive. Like, everyone points to this one study of these mice where they like gave them sugar and they gave them intravenous cocaine, and they wanted the sugar more than they wanted the cocaine. Like,
wow.
And they're showing, it is more addictive
I
than
think they're
cocaine.
actually, wow, that's crazy, dude. And I think they're linked, man. I think they've done studies that show that it stimulates the same response in your brain. It's just kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all.
So yeah, so babies that would like be exposed to cocaine in utero would have intense sugar cravings that would replace. Obviously, they can't get cocaine, but they'll have an intense sugar craving.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, the point of all that is to say that first of all, dude, being on this no sugar kick, it is like melting the pounds away. Like, whereas last week I'm all like frustrated, I'm hungry all the time, everything's stalled. This week I'm not hungry at all, and it's just like.
So this is what you and I need to do. We need to get Mac Lake on our podcast.
Dude, that guy's too fit. He'll make me feel bad.
Dude, that guy is an encyclopedia. Mac is like the body whisperer. You get around him and he just starts talking about health. And next thing you know, you're in the gym and you're eating right and drinking tons of water and getting enough sleep. And he's amazing. I remember bumping into a couple guys and being like, oh, what happened? They're like, oh, I bumped into Mac in Orlando like a couple weeks ago. Because I'm like, dude, you look great. You know, I swear to you, I'm not making this up. One of the best podcasts I ever heard was one that I did for the Sin Network with him. But we should get him on, dude, because this actually has a lot to do with ministry. Mac, funny enough, was a pastor at a church in South Carolina. You know, they know how to eat, you know, over there.
Oh, yeah.
And he was watching a video of something going on in the church, like a dedication. And he laughed because it was a bunch of people up on stage, and he laughed and said to his wife, who's that really fat guy? And she looked at him funny and said, that's you. And he didn't realize, and often you don't realize, like, you know, how until you see pictures or, you know, when you've crossed over a line. And so what's cool is Mac is a dude where it's a lifestyle for him. And so many of the people out there now where they're like, oh, Pete, you're doing it all wrong. What you need to do is come through my program and learn your body type. Not saying that it's not a more complex issue than people realize, but that's actually appealing to vanity. The reality is what you're saying. You're learning the core, like the glycemic index, the core principles of health and fitness and how the body works and process. If you know that stuff and you're not just trying to look good on Instagram, you're okay. You know, you're getting healthy. And one of the key motivations, like I know Paul was healthy because there's no way he did this stuff that he did. And then Wesley as well wrote a medical textbook for people because he felt, I mean, at like, you know, into his 70s, he was still riding like 200 miles on horseback a day. I just read a biography on him, and it was like nobody could have kept up with that dude. And he would tell these young men, he'd be like, hey, you need to take care of your body. There's no way you can be a circuit rider and expand the kingdom if you don't look after your body. So, yeah, dude, it's amazing. And if you guys want to know the link there, the link to that ministry is huge. So, and we'll cover that a little bit. I've got another podcast called Ministry Ninja. We'll be covering, three areas. One is how you think, so we'll cover theological things, what you do, ministry, action, that kind of stuff. Then the last one's personal development, because that is a huge part of being, a ministry ninja. Is boom, you gotta develop yourself mentally, spiritually, physically, yada yada yada.
Yeah. And
people are into that now, self-help and improving themselves. Hey, there's worse things you could do, right, than improve yourself.
Sure. No. I mean, yeah, I'm totally with you, and I think part of that can also be the like you said, it can be the downfall, like with the keto diet. I didn't know any of those negative sides to that, but I mean, it's not like I really studied it all that much. I mean, the thing that for me really stood out was one, we in America, we have this explosion of obesity related health conditions over the same time frame that we've been like trying to get in shape as a nation, and oh, this is a big deal. And so it really made sense to me when they're like, well, look at what they did. They took out all the fat because they said it was bad, and they replaced it with sugar. And then when you look at how your body processes sugar, no wonder it's not working for people. And I was just like, wow, okay. Now, again, don't know if it's true. Not a doctor. Not, I don't know enough about that stuff. But I do know enough about my personal body and the history in my family to know sugar ain't a good thing for us, right? Diabetes runs rampant. Sugar, it ain't a good deal.
Oh, diabetes, man, that's something you definitely don't want. See, look at us. We're two old people. I turned 46 this week. It's like we're two old people sitting around talking about health now. That's what we do. Pretty soon, it'll be like we show up, Smack Talk's all about surgeries.
How do you want your casket?
The good old days. We're already in danger of the good old days. I think we wax eloquently about the 80s far enough. Do you like that meme I sent you with the Hulk this morning?
Oh, dude, yes.
I pictured you waking up and laughing your head off. So
yeah,
you knew when you saw that look in Bixby's eyes, his eyes turned, so you knew it was going down.
Yeah, that was good.
Hey, so let's get into our topic.
All right, hold on. Let me pull up Doc Brown here. Doc.
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah, I think that Smack Talk, though, needs to be a topic on this podcast. But for sake of not misleading the listener today, because I was ready to go. I was like, let's get into this. But for you, listener, because we really do care about you, don't listen to Pete. He's just grumpy in the morning sometimes.
Oh, dude, sometimes? You know what really makes me grumpy is when my co-host doesn't show up for the podcast on time.
Oh, I totally lost track of time. Not being arrogant. Just literally was like, oh, crap. So I was pretty sure you were going to kill me.
Well, I was pretty sure I wanted to. But I can't catch you yet. You got to give me a few more pounds and then I can catch you.
That's right. I'm trying to. It'll be like Skipper and Gilligan. You're like,
really
little buddy,
right
you'll take your. You remember we used to take his hat off and start chasing him, whap, like waving his hat at him. That's what it'll be like.
Totally.
Oh, dude, please, if you're out there, Brandon, please make us a meme.
Dude, I got my son to start watching Gilligan's Island.
Oh, dude, you're a stud.
Yeah,
that's right.
He loves it.
Just sit right back in your ear, a tale of a fateful trip. I've got that memorized too. No light, no boats, no motor cars, not a single luxury. I know the whole thing.
I like it.
I have my head chock full of 80s useless trivia and information. So, okay, so going into our topic today. So how do you train an intern? It's kind of a big thing nowadays to get an intern. And, one of the funniest things I've ever seen was the New Breed video where we put – the guy goes, I have 2 ministry interns. It's that one where we take the 300 Sparta video, and the guy goes, yes, you have them, and you've made them pencil pushers for Jesus, telling them that's ministry, and it's almost ruined them for it. And what people often do when they get an intern is they just give them a bunch of admin. Here, work in this cubicle. Basically, they see it as like free labor. All the crappy things I don't want to do, I'm going to give that to an intern. And so I've had a few interns, and my first intern who came over from the UK, I told him, I said, look, you're going to have to do some of that stuff because that's ministry. I told him, look, all the behind the scenes stuff you have to do. Like somebody's got to set up online giving. Somebody's got to do bulletins. Somebody's got, or, whatever the equivalent of that is, announcements and slides or whatever it is, somebody's got to talk to the park and recreation. Someone's got to deal with insurance. Someone's got to deal. And if you don't have Simplified Church, which we'll get to that in a little bit, but if you don't have all that stuff, which we didn't in the beginning, then, somebody's got to do all that. So you will have a bunch of behind the scenes stupid stuff. So I think it's healthy to give an intern some of that, but you don't want to give an intern all of that and make that their job, because what you do is you produce an office secretary. And so for the first intern, that was Barry, and he came out and it wrecked his world. I mean, coming out, he was frontline with Ruben in San Pedro. He was involved. He was preaching. He was doing COGS. He was, doing, learning to do outreach and witnessing and things like that. And then as he went back, he started a church and a coffee shop, and that was that. I mean, I went to that. It was cool. It never got huge or anything. And then he folded it down for a time to go work for another dude. And then some other dude's like, oh, I'm taking that on and going to run with that. So what was pretty cool is that as we look at doing interns, I think the core of it needs to be ministry, actual hands-on ministry. But the first thing you've got to do is you've got to figure out, what are they here to learn? So if let's say Barry, or now I've got Ben, who's out here. Ben talked to Barry. Barry said it wrecked my life and rocked my world, and I'm not the same dude I was. Basically, Ben came out and said, I want that. Sign me up, right? So he went to Refuge Long Beach. I said, hey, I'm going to be planting here in North County, San Diego. He's like, nope, don't want that. Want the Barry Waters experience. Well, that's what you want. You want a dude where he's like, man, I want what that dude had. He came back. He wasn't the same dude. So Ben has thrown himself fully in, but I had to first do the first thing, the first bit of work, which is what Jesus does with the disciples. He figures out what they want. So if you ever read in John's gospel, where John gets, John the Baptist baptizes Jesus, and when he comes up out of the water, he goes, it says that he's driven into the wilderness, and then he comes back, and John's there, and he says, behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. And when that happens, it tells us Jesus walks away, and John and Peter, or is it not John and Peter, it's John and Andrew follow him. And as he turns around and he says to him, what are you seeking? Like, what do you want? And they don't know, right? So they throw out, oh, where are you staying, Lord? They don't know. What they're saying is, hey, we want to spend more time with you. And often your intern doesn't know the answer. They don't know what they're looking for. What they're actually looking for is they're looking at you. And the core of discipleship is, I like what I see in you. Give me some of that. So if I follow Chuck Smith or Billy Graham or Charles Spurgeon or any of those guys, Francis Chan, I would attach myself to those guys because I liked what I saw in them. And I may not be able to put it, but I'm saying I want to become like you. That's what discipleship is. I want to become like the master. And Jesus said when someone is fully discipled, or a disciple is fully equipped, he will be, or fully trained, he'll be like his master. And so that's what Jesus was doing. He was making them like him. And so if you look at all of the different things that they are, that a disciple is someone who can go through hardship. Jesus did that. Someone who can teach, Jesus did that. Someone who can spend time with people, Jesus did that. You could just go through, look at all the things that Jesus did, and Jesus told them, hey, one day you'll do greater works than I've done. And that's because of the power of the Holy Spirit. But people don't know how to put that into, put it into words, but you've got to draw that out of them.
I like it, man.
Is that, and would you say that's kind of, because when we were talking about this topic, you're like, oh, I like that topic. Have you had an intern before? I know it's a little different with ministry and, things around that.
It's definitely different, right? Like in business, everyone's looking for the money. How do I make the money? A ministry intern is a combination of how do I make impact and how do I connect with God on a deeper level. So it's a totally different dynamic. And I think what's kind of interesting to me is part of what you described is basically the live-in intern. I mean, they're not living with you, but both Barry and Ben left Wales and came here. So they're totally, fish out of water. And so you plug them into a church. That means everybody they're going to know, everybody they're going to hang out with is going to be somehow connected to the church.
Right.
And I find all of that really, really fascinating. First of all, not everybody can do that. In fact, I would say most people can't do that. Certainly married people, it's going to be very difficult to do. Not that they can't, because you've had married interns do the same thing. But it's difficult, right? You know, and then when you start mixing in kids and all that, it's a totally different ball game. So this is almost like, hey, this is what a single person, I almost kind of envision it as either someone in seminary or thinking about going to seminary. Like this type of internship would be the greatest thing that they could go through.
Yeah, for sure. And ignore the Cheerios being poured in the background. But it's funny because it is really. And I think, Jesus trained these guys for 3 years. And, we have scripture and we have things, but we didn't have Jesus. I do think internship takes longer than people think it does. They say, a year and, 2 years or whatever. But I really think if I look back on my internship process, it was longer than I often think people need. I start off as a youth pastor, had the college added to the high school group, had the junior high added to that, went to assistant pastor, cut back on some of my responsibilities, just did high school then, or maybe it was college and assistant. Like my responsibilities broadened and lessened, but they got deeper and more serious. And then I did that for years, and I went and interned over at Lloyd Jones's as the evangelist. Did that for a couple years. Then went out on my own and still made tons of mistakes. Still got my butt handed to me. And so the time, if I just look at 3 years for Jesus, I'm not saying that you have to make a rule about that, but you got to get past this idea that we're going to do it for a year. You got to assess it. You got to assess it every year. Where's this person at? Because don't get discouraged if that dude takes 3 years, because the disciples did. The people Jesus himself trained took 3 years of training 24/7. And so when you're bringing up people with full-time jobs, can you disciple them? Yeah, you can. And, maybe you have someone that you're discipling in ministry, and, the key is to have them shadow you. So if you're doing things, when they're out of work, you invite them with you. And that could be stupid things. That could be like, hey, I'm going to go talk to this person about this, or I'm going to go talk to the city, or I'm going to, go deal with this problem, or I'm going to, I hear chimes.
You had someone doing cereal. I had someone knocking on my door.
Yeah. So I hope it's an Amazon package.
Me too, because I'm not getting up.
So anyways, that's what it is. But I really think that one of the key things with this is you've got to look at I would say look at all of the different roles of the APEST. What apostolically, you gotta look at what are they? Are they apostolic? So my intern right now, my intern before was more shepherd. My intern now is more prophetic. So, and he's great. I mean, it's really cool having a prophetic guy. Because he's always like, you're talking, he's like, just thinking of that scripture that says, and I love that. He'll have like a burden, or he's very insightful, and but he can also go around and encourage. So like he comes into Refuge Long Beach. So I want to, and he encourages. So I want to see him develop prophetically. Well, the prophetic role is also very much a frontline kingdom expansion role. He comes alongside existing works and infuses life into them and encourages them and gives them a second wind. And so when he's at Refuge right now, that's kind of his role, and he knows that's his role. But he's got to keep coming back and checking in with me to hear that. So every week, and we don't have that long enough for me to give you any kind of program, but you ought to always be stimulating his mind, talking. So he and I talk constantly about Pentecostal theology, and I'll sometimes like when things will come up, he'll say, "Oh, well, Bethel says this," and I'll say, "Well, let's look at that. Let's find the biblical basis for that. Is there a biblical basis for this?" Well, no, I'm not finding one. Well, let's look at where it comes from. Like things like the you've made a contract or an agreement with an evil spirit type theology. We'll sit down and we'll say, well, that comes from a book called The Four Agreements, which is Toltec wisdom, or, shamanistic theology, which the Pentecostal movement grew in that back in such and such year when it hit the bestseller list in America. Someone read it and applied it to theology. It's actually pagan. It's actually occultic. You actually need to resist that. And so I'm constantly developing him, and he's gaining those skills now because I'm able to balance him with some of my teacher, gifting, but he'll also temper me, and that's what's great about an intern relationship. Is when you figure out, like, let's say you're a teacher or a shepherd, and you get an intern, and they're apostolic, they want to plant out from you. Well, what you've got to do is you've got to start feeding them apostolic stuff, which means you need to read apostolic stuff. And here's the cool thing is you need an apostolic person pulling on you as a leader. And so what it'll do is it'll get you out of your comfort zone. So what you have to be able to do at that point is go with them into areas where you're just holding their hand. If you're a shepherd, you're going to balance the apostle. If you're a teacher, not as much, but it's not your area, but you kind of let them lead and you go with and you process with them and you help connect it biblically for them. But what it'll do is it'll show the shortcomings and blind sides of your own ministry. So if you get an intern and you're more of the conservative APES model, like teacher shepherd, don't try to make them a teacher shepherd. Find out, hey, what makes apostolic people tick, and how do I help them develop in their gifting? And maybe part of that is to couple them up. So I've got Ben right now, he's coupled up with a couple of different ministries around Long Beach and Orange County that are evangelistic, straight up evangelistic. And so he's doing a lot of training with people that do that nonstop on Wednesdays. And that's what he does on Wednesdays. And it's helping to develop his frontline skills. So when he goes back to Refuge, which is a very frontline church, he doesn't feel out of his depth. He feels like he has skills and he's learning, okay, these guys do it this way over here. It's not as effective. These guys are doing this, and I'm much more comfortable with that. And I think that's more effective. And I'm watching people come to faith. And he's learning and developing in his roles and gifts because he's very evangelistic as well. So that, and that's all we have time for. So.
Well, at least we used our time appropriately with the false starts.
Don't know that we did. And, well, we could talk more brass tacks next week too. I mean, this is certainly something that I think we could just put a finger in that and say, let's.
What I think we ought to do? We ought to bring on Ben and ask him from the viewpoint of the guy doing the intern.
Oh, for
what
sure.
has been valuable, what has not been valuable, what would he like changed, the whole stuff.
It's hell. It's hell. Save me. Call the police. So, what's really funny is there are 3 questions that I ask him almost every week. I didn't ask this week, and it actually stuck out to me. You didn't ask it this week. But my 3 questions always for him when we get together are, what's going well? I let him talk about that. What's not going well? I mean, these are really easy questions, but they kind of set the tone for everything. Yep. And then the last one is, what do you think needs to change? And those are just really basic coaching questions. But the amount of stuff we're able to dig into because I ask those 3 questions, if you're not doing that regularly with your intern, then you're really like missing kind of the core, because they will direct, they will teach you, and they will tell you everything that's going on in them. So yeah, let's do that. In fact, next week, off of that, let's do exactly that.
Walk on the road. Walk right side, safe. Walk left side, safe. Walk middle. Sooner or later, get the squish, just like grape. Here.
Church planting.
Same thing. Either you.
Church planting do.
Yes. Or.
Church planting do.
No. You.
Church planting do.
Guess so. Just like grape.
Well, Pete, while you're doing all that training of your intern, how do you handle like all of the bookkeeping and finances and IRS compliance?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I use easychurch.com.
Oh no.
Could you imagine? Hey, we're going to come out and create a competitive organization to simplify church.com. We're going to call it Easy Church.
You better hurry up and buy that domain name. That's all I'm saying.
No,
that's actually a really good domain name. Holy cow.
I wonder if it can't be available.
I bet it is.
Wait. If Easy Church is taken, we're just going to become Easier Church.
I saw your Facebook thing where it was like hugs, and then it was like the rise of modern capitalism. The guy next to him, it says free hugs, and the guy with the sign next to him, it says hugs, deluxe hugs, $2.99. And then you go, Pete Mitchell hugs, $29.99.
Yeah.
They got to be worth more than that because they're so rare.
They are rare. They are rare.
A lot of supply
but back
and
to your
demand.
question, great question. What do you do when you got all this stuff going on and you don't really want to trust your interns with the money? Let's let them focus on other things. That's where simplifychurch.com comes into play.
Yeah. All right. Well, simplifychurch.com. You heard it here on the Church Planner Podcast for the first time. Simplifychurch.com. Check them out. And there's the train signaling us to leave the land of make-believe with Mr. Rogers, and see you another week. This has been Peyton Jones and Pete Mitchell, reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
I made my money the old-fashioned way. I got run over by a Lexus.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.